Wonderful. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. Hi, Gary. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Sylvia.
I really love your background.
Yeah, I love like getting down on my hands and knees like a kid and playing in the grass. So that's
It's
me today.
beautiful. And from there, you can see the night sky in a different way,
Oh
right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Ah.
Yes, yes. So today is the 11th of March. How the time passed by so fast. It's
Hmm.
incredible. It's the 11th, and we started at 11 a.m., which is a very magical number, right?
Wow.
Magic is happening. And our podcast together, when we come in discussion, is called the Behenian Bulletin, which was Gary's idea, and I really love that idea. But today, the title is Exploring the Firmament. So, because we're going deeper. My kind of crowd that I'm working with in astrology are used to more like the planets and the retrogrades and all those aspects, mundane aspects. But here we talk more about Hermetic astrology, the occult, the mystical, the magical part of it. And so I want to do a little introduction. And so I have prepared a few questions for Gary, who has deep knowledge on Hermetic astrology. And the first question is when I introduce to our, audience, what is the firmament?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So I would just invite people to look at you and your beautiful face and then look behind, right? You have this beautiful picture of the earth and the stars above. And so the idea going all the way back to, if we think about the Greek philosophers, some of them were known as the pre-Socratic philosophers, because they predated Socrates. Um, Even back then, they thought that, for instance, there was one guy, I want to say, it might be Anaximander, I might have the name wrong, but there was a theory that the sun and moon went around the heavens like on a wheel, and they were big balls of fire. And the stars were also bowls of fire, but they were just further away. Now these are people, you know, just very ancient, like 6th century BC or something, right? But they had it pretty much exactly correct. The stars are big balls of fire and they're very far away.
So
And
true.
so the firmament becomes this wheel, so from the beginning, Plato, for instance, said the most perfect shape is a sphere. So if the earth is here and the earth happens to be a sphere, more or less,
Hmm.
um, and then the universe must also be the shape of a sphere. And so the firmament is essentially that, what we know in astronomical terms as the celestial dome, like the dome of the
Mm.
sky where the stars, imagine like a dome and the stars are attached to that dome. That's basically what the firmament is. It's a way of situating ourselves vis-a-vis these faraway balls of fire, right? It's actually a word that you find in the Bible as well. You find them talking about the firmament. Um,
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for this. Gives an idea, and we also have an image to show to our audience. I'll give you a moment while I'm sharing a little bit of my Greek brain side. The firmament is the celestial barrier, and the word firmament comes from Latin firmamentum, holds firm. It's a dome, exactly like you said, it's a dome. And there is an incredible Greek word that is called the stereoma. Stereoma, it is the intonation of the modern Greek. The ancient Greek is stereoma, and means something solid that holds, like a bridge, solid as a bridge that holds the heavens.
Ah,
Stereoma. Firmamentum is Latin, stereoma is Greek. And also, in a biblical terms, in when the creative force was creating the world, the stereoma was what separated the primordial seas. Exactly, the primordial seas from the heavens.
mm,
So that is incredible. And so if you have, if you're able to show that image
yes.
of nut, um, because it's so profound. Um,
It says that you have to enable that. So if you click on participants and you make me
okay.
co-host or something, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Let me make you make host. Okay, perfect.
All right. So that should do it. Yeah, here we go.
Fantastic.
So can you see this now?
Yes, I can see
Yeah.
this.
All
It
right.
looks a little small, but I believe our audience will be able to see it. Yes. So this image of N-A-U-T, not the goddess of the night sky, is it was in ancient Egypt, the myth that she was the one that was holding the firmament. She was herself the firmament, and in her belly there were some special stars. I have to remember to look at my notes that in her belly were special stars, and I believe those were the fixed stars, which leads us to the question, isn't that magical? I remember seeing this in a museum, but I don't remember exactly which museum it was. But this is a pretty amazing image. Also, we see me coming from a world of yogis. Also, I love the yoga. She's almost like in a downward dog, right? So
Yep.
she's holding this image, this pose, um, holding the night sky.
Sometimes I
And
do that one when my back is hurting. I do the cat, like arched the cat with its arched back, and then you do the cow, the cat and the cow,
yes, the cat and the
kind of
cow.
restores some motion to your back muscles and gets things going. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is such a wonderful image. And which leads us to the question of what are the fixed stars?
Aha. Yeah. Yeah. I love this idea of Newt being I say Newt. Is it Nut? Newt? I'm not. How
Newt
is it?
is fine, but in the Mediterranean, I'm used to it as nut.
Is it? Okay.
But maybe it's just
Yeah.
our accent
I
there.
love the idea of her body literally being the Milky Way, that there's this brilliant arching band of light across the sky that is this mother figure that's holding us in her embrace. She's literally, as you said, she's that solid support that's holding the sky above to give us space to be.
Mm,
She's holding the space. You know how they say holding space like it's ceremonial.
yes,
Someone who is a priestess, that's their main function, is to hold the space for people to be safe and present and for spirit to enter, and so yeah, I love this image. And when I'm out, sometimes I try to envision that, like I try to, oh, there's the Milky Way, and oh yes, if I stand back, I can see the Great Mother, you know, holding the sky above us, and it feels so alive in that moment, like I feel as if maybe I'm almost transported back to Alexandria or something where, you know,
Absolutely. Yes. She's it's really great. And I love the idea that you're sharing because the great mother, their primordial great mother, whatever the name that each civilization gave, is the one because the womb is a space.
mm,
And so this is almost like the womb of the universe. And,
yes.
and and we're coming exactly to the point. When I was researching this and reading about like in her belly there, and I believe, if I remember well, was and we have to confirm this in our upcoming podcast, the royal stars of Persia. I think there were four, but in general, the stars that were important, the ones that hold the firmament, are the fixed stars. And so this is so incredible. So, what would you like to share with us? And then we can go back to the image so we can see both of us. Thank you.
Yeah.
What would you like to share with us about the fixed stars?
So yeah, so if we go back to this idea of so this image of creation beginning, right? There's this primordial sort of chaos, if you will, and there's this separation of, and in this case, I'm Jeb, right? Is it Jeb? And Newt, the husband, is not that I'm asking you to marry me, but I'm just metaphorically speaking.
No, I understand. We are talking about the.
He's the earth, right? Jeb is the earth and Newt is the sky, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So it's kind of reversed from the Greek, which in which Oranos was the god of the heavens and Gaia was the mother. But in many cosmologies, this primordial division and this opening of the space, which, as you said, is very much like womb-like. That's how we come into the world, is from this space that's created. Um, and then there's light or a seed or that comes into the womb, and that's how life begins. And so you can begin to see in the cosmology, like it's literally like a visual metaphor of how we know that life actually operates in biology, which is really cool. But then if we get a little bit more, we go back to the philosophy where, again, there was this vision of this great wheels and there were the stars were attached to this great wheel, this dome. Now between the stars, which would be the farthest circle, there was a series of other circles that were much closer to the Earth, and these are the planets. So when you hear somebody say such and such about the seventh heaven, they're literally talking about the celestial sphere of Saturn, because if you go from Earth through the seven planets, Saturn is the seventh sphere from the Earth, so the seventh heaven. Now, if you're coming inward, the seventh heaven is Venus. So it kind of depends on which way you're going. But anyway, this idea that the stars are above the spheres of the planets. I think we talked about this a little bit last time, but it's really important to understand. Um, Planets reflect light. They don't. Jupiter came about this close from being a star, actually. So Jupiter, as one of the brightest planets, has a lot of light, but they don't create their own light. They reflect the light of star, the sun. And so the stars, being these big balls of fire, literally, they are not just above the planets, but they are also more, hmm, I don't want to say it the wrong way. Even though we envision the planets as the gods, right? Like Jupiter is literally what the Greeks would say is the star of Zeus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Star of it's the celestial body associated with the god Zeus. So it's not Zeus himself, but it's the star of Zeus, right? So um but this idea that that stars create the matter, they're basically nuclear furnaces where the elements, first they burn, helium and then hydrogen, and then when they begin to run out, the chain reactions of the elements until we get carbon and the heavier elements, and then as it's going through this process, it implodes, and like it spews the seeds of life out across the universe. Planets don't do that. That's a very creative act that separates the beingness of a star from the beingness of a planet. Planets revolve around stars. Stars create planets, you know? So there's a pretty big distinction here, a couple pretty big distinctions here. And so when you see charts with connections to fixed stars, this shows a very dramatic potential for someone who is able to go beyond the normal. So the planets were also seen to be like, because they are closer to the Earth, they kind of enclose the Earth in these 7 bands. So they were seen like in the most let's see what the word I want to use, the most harsh interpretation of this was like the Gnostics. They saw them as literally almost like our prison guards that were keeping us in, because almost many of the myths saw us as coming from the stars, right? And if we come from
Yes.
the stars and the planets are surrounding us, oh wow, they're keeping us from our true home. This is this is one of the most extreme interpretations, but this idea that even the Greeks saw, Hellenistic astrology was basically like the science of fate. It's like the planets are going to show how your fate unfolds. And so this idea of like fated existence is what the planets represent. And with the stars being beyond that, there's maybe an ability to rise above one's fate. So this idea of like, what do they call it when you're moving up the social ladder? Uh,
The ceiling,
yeah,
the glass ceiling.
yeah, like a woman who breaks through the glass ceiling, for instance. I would bet she has some connection to some prominent fixed stars, because that's the kind of energy that allows people to rise above these limits that enclose us normal, right? Um, yeah, so there's very, very powerful beings, these stars.
This is a great explanation, Gary. And I wanted to add something. Um, Coming from, there is a big influence on me from the Indian Vedic cosmology, but in combination with the Greek and the Mediterranean, but not in the sense that I follow Vedic astrology as I follow the moon. I do follow the sun, but there is an incredible, how can I say, contribution. And I don't know if anyone else spoke about this, but when I saw, and one day it's nice to show the way that the planets revolve around the sun. When I saw the movement around the sun of the planets, I said, oh, wow, these are the 7 chakras. And the seventh heaven is the 7 chakras. And so it seems that the planets, and I don't know exactly when historically it happened that the ancient ancestors started seeing the planets as limitations, or they started feeling that they were against them in a way. Like, we need to protect ourselves
Yeah, for the
from
Gnostics anyway, there was some kind of adversarial a little bit. Yeah.
exactly the Gnostics, which leads us to our next question, which about the Picatrix, which it rhymes up so beautiful. But um, so if the planets are kind of related to our seven chakras because it's as above, so below, as without, so within, then it makes sense that the planets affect our emotions.
They are the body of our solar system. So as above, so below. There's seven energy centers to our system, seven visible ones anyway. And there are seven centers in our body. So the body of our local system reflects the body of our local system.
Perfect. Exactly. This makes total sense. My
Doesn't it?
Virgo mind, yeah, my Virgo mind likes to organize the
Yeah, that's a
information.
great point, Sylvia. Thank you for bringing that out. And so yeah, then the fixed stars would represent something like that. Somehow people talk about chakras that are above the seven that are like in the body. And yes, I know that there are other systems that have many more than seven chakras and so on and so forth. But so if there's a chakra, for instance, that's above the crown chakra, maybe it's like the crown chakra is sort of like our interface with the divine. And then maybe there's a chakra above that. Some people say that's literally like that's where our higher self is at. Or in Greek terms, they would say the daimon, our guardian angel. Our guardian
Mm,
angel might actually just be our higher chakra. That's not an embodied chakra. It's us, but it's just a higher chakra. I'm not saying I know this to be true. I'm just saying like we can imagine these things and use them.
and this is exactly the demon is in Greek. You're very right. Demon, creative demon, the spirit of creation of our higher self. And this is exactly what leads us to our discussion about our star today. The ancient kings wearing the crown around the actual crown with the little dots that they had with gold being the metal of the sun, communicating, having a little
Oh,
antennas,
look,
right? Right? Exactly.
the first
Communicating
tinfoil hat. So the tinfoil works in the other way. It's like keeping it out, right? This was actually designed to,
opening.
yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And only the kings. And one time, another time, we can talk about the
Hmm.
sacred and the profane, and the role of the king or queen as a high priest or high priestess, which
As a conduit to the divine, to yeah, they were seen to be representative. The in other words, just like our seven chakras are the local version of the system, of the cosmic system, the king or queen was the local version of the divine, right? So,
yes,
yeah, and that,
yes,
I mean, I I can't remember the last time somebody said something so refreshingly beautiful and refreshingly obvious as that, hey, maybe that crown was kind of like an antenna to beam in and out the with the higher powers, like you think? It had jewels on it. It's like basically a talisman, right?
it is the absolute talisman. Yeah, the
Yeah.
absolute talisman. And a part of which I want to share a little bit later is reclaiming our crown in magical astrology and in all traditions. Let's say if you even if you don't know the yogic tradition or whatever, the gnostic or whatever, but is reclaiming our crown, is reclaiming our contact with the system, with this amazing system of the planet, and receiving the messages, receiving through our crown the messages.
Yeah.
And one last thing I want to say about the fixed stars, it's funny, I think I mentioned something like that last time. It's like everything is moving and is happening and evolving, and the fixed stars are almost like the audience that is like sitting there, like watching, observing and holding together a more solid influence of
Mm,
the evolution, the spiritual evolution.
wonderful.
Last time we said about the pins on a shirt, is that like the pins on the firmament, or even the crew behind the scenes in a
Yeah, that's a
play.
wonderful way to think about it. Yeah, because the planets are always moving. By definition, the word planet means wandering star.
Yeah, planetas.
So, and that's the wonderful thing to me about the Greek gods. They're very human, actually. You know, they wander around and have adventures. Some of them we got to kind of scratch our heads and go, is that really godlike behavior? But, uh, yeah, they move around a lot and they have a lot of adventures. And that's the nature of a planet. It's always moving. But as you say, the fixed stars are much more like nut, holding space. They're holding this strong, stable, enduring energy of um, solidity and firmament. They're firming and so yes, this idea of like these um, elder observers that are watching the young ones run around and yeah, and laughing or crying or whatever is appropriate. Yeah, I
Or
like
wait, or waiting patiently for us to open our
wake
crown
up.
and connect with the universe. And this is so incredible because we're doing the beautiful introduction, which leads us to the question that I had for you. What is the Picatrix, and how is the Picatrix related to astrology magic?
Right. So the first thing I have to do when I answer this question is to apologize because I'm going to probably murder the Arabic. The Arabic title of Picatrix is Gayat al-Hakim or something like that, which basically means the goal of the wise or the aim of the sage. So to answer your question in one word, it's a book of wisdom. It's a book of, but it's not just a book of wisdom, it's a book of how to be wise. So, um, and in its most literal terms, it's a collection of pieces of books that one, and we don't know exactly who. There's a lot of speculation, and some people are, of course, very sure they know who, but nobody really knows if we're perfectly truthful. There was a person who collected all this and put it together. And what an incredible collection of wisdom it is. Sometimes it's difficult to follow. It's not because it's not one cohesive narrative, it's a collection. It's sort of like well, wait, you said this before, but you said it differently. And now which one's true? It can be a little confusing. And so that's sort of like the downside of it. But the upside is that it's literally collection of Hindu, Greek, um, Arabic, and Chaldean, which are different from the Persians. And it's a collection of all the wisdom of the world as they knew it at the time, which is quite remarkable. Yeah.
Very remarkable. Very, and from the side of Kabbalah, that King Solomon had the wisdom in the knowledge of the magic and the spirits, how to command the spirits of the wise. Maybe the chronology doesn't match, but the truth is that King Solomon is kind of like, and we don't know if it's just one person. We don't know if we're talking for just one existed, in a certain time, but under the umbrella of Solomonic wisdom, that this is the perfect document, one of the perfect documents that represents that knowledge. with Chaldean being also in that area of the Mediterranean and Middle East, and the Babylonians and the Assyrians being the first in the
Yeah,
temples that
yeah,
were observing the stars.
yes. So yeah, and the Beatrix chronology wise, it dates sometime around 900. So it would have literally been in the Dark Ages for Europe. But at the time that Europe was in the so-called Dark Ages, um, which was like post-Greek, Hellenistic, and post-Roman, um, there was a time where, like, and again, this is somewhat a judgmental term because just the fact that pagan, quote unquote barbarians became the more in power, then it becomes automatically a dark age. I'm not necessarily ascribing to that, but the amount of knowledge that came forth from Europe was limited at this time. So it's dark in that sense. Compared to what was coming forth in Persia, they were having a golden age. They were having a flourishing, a renaissance, if you will. And so this is part of the Arabic Renaissance, the Persian Renaissance at the very beginning. Now it was translated into Spanish and Latin by Alfonso the Great, I think, was the Spanish king, the Iberian king, who took it from the Arabic. And what's really fascinating about this, that happened about 800 years ago. Now, as astrologers, that's really fascinating because 800 years is about one of the longest cycles we have. And it's the cycle of the planets Jupiter and Saturn, the planets of kings, coming together. And the way that they come together is they come together in a particular trigon, an elemental triplicity is another way we call. So we have the fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have the earth signs, so fire. We have the earth signs of Taurus, um, Virgo, and Capricorn. We have the air signs of Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. And we have the water signs of Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, right? So Jupiter and Saturn, their conjunctions will occur within one of these elements for about 200 years, and then it will move to the next. And so to make it through all four elements takes about 800 years. So what we see is that about 800 years ago, when the Jupiter, Saturn, now take a wild guess, which one of the elements Jupiter and Saturn were activating when Alfonso was doing all these wonderful translations? Or sponsor. He wasn't doing them, he was sponsoring them. He was the king with the rays to heaven, and the rays to heaven were saying, tell these men to translate these documents, right? Take a guess what element Jupiter and Saturn were activating.
Jupiter, Saturn probably was fire. Was fire and earth or
It was the Picatrix was written in fire, it was translated in air.
air? Fire and air. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
The movement.
And
The
now,
movement.
and now Jupiter and Saturn, 800 years later, return to the air. We just had a conjunction in Aquarius in 2020. And what happens? The Picatrix is translated once again from Latin into English,
This is so incredible.
isn't it? Yeah.
This is so incredible, fantastic. Like nothing is a coincidence. The
No.
elements. And when you were describing to us, I have some amazing cards I'll show another time, but the elements of the triangles, trigono in Greek in the geometrical language, geometria. Geometria means literally measuring the earth,
Uh,
measuring planets, or measuring the earth, meaning as what is three-dimensional and has a body, not
mhm.
necessarily the earth as a planet, but measuring structures
Measuring
and
bodies, right?
as an embody, exactly. And so it's the triangles you're describing, the trigona you're describing is the elements of alchemy and magic. The
100%.
everything starts from
They're the
there.
elements that from which everything is made. Empedocles, who's another one of these pre-Socratic philosophers, he said these are like, so you know how artists have the three primary colors, right? Blue, yellow, and red, right? Um, and yet they make thousands, millions of colors just by mixing them in different proportions. It's the same way, the four elements, by mixing them in different proportions, we get everything that we know of.
All different proportions. Exactly, exactly. So thank you so much for sharing about the Picatrix. I'm gonna share like few notes that I have here that the Picatrix is composition, as you said, of just to give a little for our audience recap. It's several books composed, put together in Arabic, Moorish, by the Moors in Spain, sometime before the 11th century. That's what the dates you said, 900, between the 900 and the 11 centuries. And I love the title is The Aim of the Sage, The Goal of the Wise. Beautiful title. And
Kind of
basically,
Zoroastrian, if you think about it. Like, you know,
yes,
what did we call them? The people who came to visit the baby Jesus, the wise men.
the wise men.
And so this is so how to be a magi is another way that we could say the title of that book. How to be a magi, the aim of the sage, the goal of the wise. How to be a magi.
And it's so beautiful that you reminded me the three kings. It's so incredible because, and the Zoroastrian is because I feel in my heart, from an intuitive point of view, there, I don't want to say the word worship, I want to say the word veneration, which is coming from Veneris, Venus, to have grace towards,
Mm.
to talk to meet with grace, sun, moon, and stars is the most ancient form of worship, which is
And wisdom, to have the
and wisdom.
wisdom to do that in the first place. It
Exactly.
is, yeah, yeah.
Very, very true. So it is basically a handbook of talismanic magic, which talismanic magic will be the theme of our next upcoming podcast, and the book of hermetic knowledge. And this is
100%. It's a very great primer on Hermetic philosophy as well as there's a lot of philosophy in there. 100%. Yeah.
fantastic. So this is our sharing about the Picatrix. We'll talk more about it in upcoming sessions. And as a last question, last discussion, I wanted us to talk a little bit about Alfeca. Let me see if
Ah,
I can show. Yes, right here.
there you go.
Incredible, incredible image. I can't bring it closer, but it is the Northern Crown. Speaking about the crowns today,
Corona
incredibly,
Borealis. Yes.
yes. So
Uh,
feel free to share with us a little
okay.
bit about
Yeah.
the
Alphecca is first of all, as the name implies, the Northern Crown Borealis. It's very high in the sky. And so if we think this is the other thing that separates the stars from the planets, not only the planets all move relatively along one path that's called the ecliptic plane. The ecliptic plane is essentially the path of the Earth around the sun. And more or less, the planets are all within it's about a 20-degree span above or below that plane. So the planets all move. Now, Alphecca is much higher than any place the planets ever go, even Pluto, which has is a very different than the visible planets that stay within the
we
span.
can't see it with the naked eye, right? Can we see it with
Pluto?
naked eye? Alfeca.
Oh, yes, we can.
Okay.
You have to be, um, You have to be well versed in astronomy to find it because it's so high, and it's not a really bright star. But it's totally visible with the naked eye. Now, if you're very close to a city, maybe not. But if you're at least, let's say, 1 hour from a major city, and you would have to be 1 hour, preferably. In fact, even if you were only half an hour from the city, but you were half an hour away towards the north, so that the lights of the city were towards the south,
Behind you.
and
Yeah.
you're looking towards the north. She's a northern star. Yeah, you should be able to see her naked eye, no problem. Um, if you want to pause the recording, I can pull up a little bit of a map for people to see
Sure.
how to
Gary,
locate her.
I think that the recording now, because I made you a co-host,
Oh, okay.
maybe you can do that.
Got it.
Let me see.
I'll pause recording. Okay, I think I have the visual we need, so let me bring this up. Can you see that?
Yes, and now I
Oh,
can see it. Yes.
awesome. Okay. So this is this image is for March 18th. So coming up, not too long away. The moon, which is down here by this pink band. This pink band is the ecliptic plane. So this is the path that the sun, moon, and planets move along, generally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see some stars like Regulus and like Spica and like Antares, they're relatively close to this pink band. And so and because they're bright, they stand out as like really important stars, kind of holding that space, as you were saying. Now, very high above this, towards the north, um, you see the star Arcturus,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually in the same. If we think about where is Arcturus in my chart, it will be about 25 degrees of Libra in the
Mm-hmm.
tropical zodiac. Where is Spica in my chart? It's about 24 degrees of Libra. So they're only this far apart, but in the sky, look, they are like this far apart because
Mm.
there's this northern dimension. And so we can talk about like maybe Arcturus represents another aspect of the Spica energy that is a little more, you have to reach a little more to get that one. Then maybe Spica is more available because she's so close, you know? Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this idea that the crown is so high makes sense because the crown gets put on the heads of people who are elevated in the societal structure, right? So the crown is up here. It's next to Boetes, who is he's called the Bear Ward. Here is the Ursa Major. Ursa Minor is a little bit higher than this. And so he's like seen to be either chasing or leading the bears as they revolve around the pole. That's the role of Boetes. And then next to Boetes, we see this. Can you see this shape? It's basically like a crown. It's like an
Yes,
arch,
yes, I see.
an arch of stars. And here we have Alphecca it's the alpha star that's in the part of the crown that would be, on the head. So this is Alphecca.
Wow, so powerful.
Yeah. And now what's really fascinating, and one of the reasons why I wanted to call attention to this now, unfortunately, March 18th is happening at a time that's between eclipses. So there will be a lunar eclipse before this day, and there will be a solar eclipse after this day. And so
Yes.
that place, portal, that liminal place between eclipses can be very chaotic. So generally speaking, we don't make talismans during that time because it's
Between eclipses,
unpredictable.
yes.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
unpredictable. So unfortunately, this is not an election for talisman making, but we can still go out and we can look at the moon and look up and see and make a connection. And I think it's a wonderful thing to do, especially right now, because the astronomers are telling us there is a star that we can't see right now in this constellation, but every so often it becomes much more bright. It becomes like a nova.
Mm,
It becomes incredibly bright. And so there's like this hidden star, bonus star in this constellation that any day now or any year now, stars move on their own time frame. So it could be any day, any month, or any year. But within the next few years, they're predicting that there will be this sudden brightening of a star in that constellation. And so it feels like that she's talking to us. She's saying, "Hey, look at me."
mm,
And so it feels like a wonderful time to bring this constellation to people's attention, um, and to begin to learn to see her, um, and to begin to maybe open up to this idea that you said, that crowns are not just for kings, but that we all can have these antenna. And maybe like originally all of us did,
mm-hmm.
it was just part of our psychic um, body. Like we just naturally had this attunement, and
Mm,
and we've forgotten about it. And so, because if you think about it, the only reason you would need the crown put on your head to have these antennas is if you didn't have one to begin with, right? You lost touch with that natural ability to do that. And so you need this
exactly.
device to like or to amplify it perhaps. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And thank you so much for this image, Gary. It's so helpful and so beautiful.
Mm,
And we can return to our image. I wanted to share how beautiful, the wisdom of the universe. And
mm,
also in the book that I have here, a little booklet of Butler and Johnson on the fixed stars, they also refer to the star as a she. And it says here, a little paragraph I chose. Of course, Alfeka is not only about getting ahead materially or professionally. It's a star with royal symbolism, and she will always carry those associations with wealth and powerful people. But she's also concerned with goodwill and friendship.
mm,
While some monarchs seek to hoard their wealth and isolate Africa, the power when the power becomes abusive,
mm.
the star Alfeka encourages us to share with another and be present, to share with
Yeah.
another and be present. And I
Yeah.
found this so beautiful that it's about not superficial relationships, but help building community.
Mm. Yeah, because
And
ideally
yeah,
the sovereign, the king or queen, is supposed to be to serve the people. They're the rep, they're the person who mediates between God and the people. So they're serving God and serving the people. That's their job. Yeah, it's not to be egotistically hoarding. No, it's the opposite. It's to be like, think about how generous the sun is. If the solar, right, it's made of gold, so they're supposed to be, does the sun discriminate upon who it will shine? No. The sun shines upon the beggar, the king, the criminal, the saint, shines on everyone, you know? And it's an interesting thing to think about, like that kind of generosity of like, it's kind of the opposite, like in the exact opposite of what I'm talking about is like where you hear people say, um, well, if they're fighting a battle or something, so we don't quite know who's the enemy and who's not. And someone will say, well, kill them all and God will sort them out. This is kind of the opposite. Like if you help anyone you encounter, if you treat everyone with kindness, and God will sort out which ones were deserving of that and which ones were not. You
So
see?
keep shining your light for everyone. And even if, and going back to the talisman, which we'll talk about next, our next podcast, is okay, if I'm shining my light and people come with whatever intentions, I'm still shining my light, and that my light protects me and my relationship to the stars. And this is what a
Yeah.
talisman represents, the relationship with the stars and the benevolence that
Yeah.
these stars bring in.
And the
Yeah,
enduring ones. Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Which leads me to the last, we're over time, but it's so beautiful knowledge we're sharing. Um, and of course, we're open to questions. Our audience can send us questions when we share this podcast on Substack and other media. But it's fascinating to me the fact that you hear the stars talking to you. And this is something we have in common, and that's why we're here
Mm.
today. So I wanted to ask you to share a little bit about your experience of how did it happen? How was the first time that you look up and the star is like blinking at you? And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a story, but I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. When I was a boy, I had I grew up in the country, so I've always had this connection with nature to begin with. Like I always saw, like I remember walking out even in my backyard and being like, oh my God, like there's so much incredible energy and wondrous, like the animals coming and the plants and the stars, and everything. So I always had this connection with nature. And then, we go to school, and I was actually pretty good at school. And so, there was this sort of uh, pressure on me because I was going to be the first one to go to college and everything. And then I got to college and I found out, like, wow, this is really it felt to me almost like the Gnostic version of like the planets. Like it's oppressive. Like there's this, it's like some people would see, oh, all the knowledge of is at my hands, but it was only at my hands if I allowed myself to be framed within the way they wanted to present it. Like you have to take this curriculum or that curriculum. You can't just study whatever
It was
feels.
very restrictive,
It felt
restrictive.
it felt restrictive. And so when I left there, I remember thinking like, this is not feeding my soul. I need to find the magic again. I literally went in search of the magic. And so I went in search of the magic, and that's how I found astrology, you know? And after I found astrology, I remembered, oh wow, like this is the science of the stars. Like maybe I should remember to look up and be in the sky. And the first way I started doing that was with Venus and the cycle of Venus. It's wonderful. We can talk about it sometime. If you follow my Instagram or Substack, I'm always talking about Venus. So there's plenty to find there. Um, and because she's so beautiful and
Is something to talk about for sure.
yeah, I would just, when I would go out to witness Venus, I would go out and I just felt, I guess I just needed someone to talk to, and so I would pour my heart out to her, and I didn't expect to hear anything. I would just knew that I needed to unburden myself, I guess. And so I would go and I would see her and I would thank her and I would, and then I would speak my heart essentially. And then I would thank her again. And one time as I was leaving, I was probably, I was very fortunate when I was living in Asheville. I could literally just go a couple streets over and have the right view. And so I was only a couple streets away. And so I was about halfway back home, like I had walked a couple blocks. And I heard something from that direction that seemed to be a direct answer to a question that I had. I was saying something in my heart, that I couldn't understand.
Mm.
And she answered me. And I was like, wait, did I really hear that? Like, and so I turned around and I went back and I was like, was that you? Is this, are we talking? And so that was like revelatory, like and that delay eventually, like that delay, I guess it was like it's kind of like when you first establish a connection, like it's more difficult, right? And eventually it got to be where I was more present, I guess, and we could actually have like a conversation. Um, and I just want to say right now, like that's just my way. Like it just happened for me. I didn't even set out to do it. I just happens to be something that I'm wired for, apparently. Um, Other people might feel that voice in their body. There might be a particular part of their body that's speaking to them when they're with a star. And even with other stars, like the first time I saw this star, it's called Canopus. It's it's a really bright star, but it's a southern star, and so you have to go, like I was in the Bahamas when I first saw it. Um, and I felt it in my belly. It was like, oh, I was like, wow. I didn't hear a voice speaking to me. I just felt this strong presence here in my lower chakras, and so there's different ways. The other way, is like as you're going to do this, and this act of stargazing, by the way, and this is a whole podcast that we can do. It's
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
basically an act of ritual magic. You
mm-hmm.
because this act of gazing at the stars, and then they would go and then they would write down what they saw. This is how astrology came to be, but it's not just how astrology came to be, it's how civilization came to be.
Exactly.
And so this act, if you this sacred act, as you're going and coming, it's like a vision quest. Like you might
Mm.
see a particular animal on the way, or on the way back. Oh, there's a message. So there's many ways that you can get that these beings can speak to us, right? So you don't have to, it doesn't have to be like mine. It could be your own, and it probably won't be because I'm me and you're you, and that's the beauty of it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing this wonderful experience. And I've been wanting to say, Hail Venus the Great.
Yes, hell,
Hail
bright
beauty.
Aphrodite, thank you. And what's amazing is that from that small beginning, as I began to teach other people and share, you know, I shared with one lady who was Puerto Rican, and so of course she's bilingual by necessity. And then she moved to Spain and began teaching all these people in Spain. And now I have all these people. And of course, she told them, I got these teachings from Gary Caton. And now I have all these people in Spain who consider me their like grandfather or uncle.
This is wonderful, Gary. And you're going, how many days? You're traveling in a few days, right?
Yeah, I'm going to be there just before the eclipse, and just after the eclipse, I'll return. So, 3 weeks. Yeah, I get to go. In the
Fantastic.
middle, we're going to be in a cave for Venus's interior conjunction.
Wow.
So yeah,
This is incredible. And thank you for sharing this experience.
and
This
so
is the
that's
reason, yeah.
that's the power that this act of stargazing, if it's approached as as ceremonial, as a sacred ceremonial act, it can take you places I never imagined. I don't speak Spanish. How could I think I would be the uncle of many people in Spain? It's it's unimaginable. But and yet it's true. And so this is what can happen when you follow these callings, It's amazing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you become their student, There are stars talking to you, and they're calling you in Spain, where is the Picatrix was put
I
together.
know, I
Like
know.
this is the book,
Toledo. Yes, I got to go there to Toledo. Wow, incredible.
it's incredible, incredible. Just a couple of more things I want to share. Yesterday, I was talking to Venus. I stood in front of my altar and I talked to her, and I feel like how um she's descending deeper and deeper into the underworld right now.
Yeah.
And I understand why the ancients felt like missing her.
Mm,
They, as a woman, as a priestess, I all my, you know, I have the both side of altars. I have an altar for Shiva and for the young, for Mars, and
yeah.
the most of them are for the sacred feminine, the goddess. And so I felt this deep sense of like missing her and talking to her, and please listen to my voice, please hear me and show
Yes.
me, for the deep transformations. I mean,
Mm,
because on a personal level, the upcoming eclipse is on my sign. I'm a Virgo, so the two
yeah.
upcoming eclipse, and we are in the space in between. There's a
Yes.
super powerful space of the cauldron of
Mm,
alchemy, the womb of alchemy, the deep darkness, the unborn. And so that is happening. And the other thing I wanted to share, and then we will close with a few words from you, is that for the audience who is listening to us and is somehow afraid or wondering, what is this magic? The magic is exactly what Gary just shared, actively communicating with the universe.
mm.
It doesn't mean that you're in a dark place and crafting, metals, I
It
mean, you
can.
could.
Well, it can mean you're in a light place in crafting metals too.
Exactly, exactly. But there is nothing fearful. But one thing that is very important is that for anything, we need to be humble and acquire knowledge. We can't go out arrogantly in the forces of the universe. And it's interesting, one
Well,
last
you
thing about
can, but usually there's some lessons that come with that. Yeah.
exactly, a little on the crown or on things happen. One other very dear tradition to me, which I'll share another time. There was another man similar to you. It's in the depths of the jungle in the Amazon. Um, about maybe a bit more than 150 years ago, when the slaves became free, almost 200 years ago, and he was in the forest sharing with the moon, and the
Mm,
moon started talking to him. He heard her voice, and he said, who is this beautiful feminine voice? He got confused. He got trepidation, like, who are you? Who is she?
yes, that's the
And,
natural reaction.
and the moon said to him, the way you talk to me will be with songs and poems. You praise me with songs and poems, and entire tradition sprang, in the
Yes.
Amazon of that. So that's
Yeah.
another story. But
There's a great tradition in the Babylonian with that too. There's a poem called The Exaltation of Inanna that was made by the priestess in Babylon. Yeah, it's incredible. I post excerpts of that from time to time, and people are always like, "Oh my God," because you can feel the tremendous love, the outpouring of love and devotion. Um, and that, as you probably know, Sylvia, that outpouring of love and devotion, it's talked about in the Bhagavad Gita when Krishna
mhm.
comes down in the form of the charioteer and talks to Arjuna. He chastises him and says, "So you're not doing your part. Here I am. I'm creating this. I'm sending the divine emanations down into become matter. I'm doing my part, but you have to, through devotion, do your duty." And that's what the magic is too. It's a way of returning the energy and keeping the cycle of energy flowing between the divine emanations that are coming down into materiality and then sending our energy, our devotional energy back. It completes the circuit of energy. And that's how the magic occurs, I imagine, because of the flowing of energy. It creates a resonance or something, you know?
A resonance, a vibration.
Mm,
Exactly. There is so much more to talk about. Thank you so much for your time, the images. Thank
yeah,
you so much.
yeah.
Namaste.
Namaste.
And as soon as we pause the recording, we'll share this information on our media, and also we'll find out the new, we'll locate our upcoming date, which I imagine will be after Spain.
Yeah, it'll be in April sometime. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Sylvia. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.